Welcome back. Today we join a solitary builder on a drifting bamboo platform, aiming to carve a sustainable existence out of a flooded mangrove forest. The environment offers abundant resources, but the constant rain sets a relentless constraint. Staying dry is the first law of survival. Bamboo makes an ideal foundation for a floating shelter due to its hollow internodes, which provide immense natural buoyancy. He adjusts the low-slung thatched roof, lowering the center of gravity against unpredictable river winds. A sloped pitch ensures the heavy tropical downpour sheds rapidly rather than pooling on the structure, with water pressing in from all sides. Maintaining this minimal shelter is a daily necessity. The dogs rely entirely on his foresight to keep the living deck above the waterline. The initial foraging yields a harvest of small river shellfish. Processing them requires patience and a sharp tool to sever the strong adductor muscles, holding the shells closed. These mollusks are a vital source of lean protein, essential for maintaining physical energy in cold, damp conditions. Once the immediate meal is prepped, attention shifts to long-term passive harvesting. He deploys simple fishing lines directly from the deck. A wide-brimmed hat breaks the continuous rainfall, preserving core body heat. In this static environment, waiting is a primary survival tactic. Stillness conserves calories. Later in the afternoon, the focus shifts to internal warmth. Building a fire directly on a dry bamboo deck requires careful thermal management to prevent the floor from catching. He uses a raised metal base to isolate the embers from the structural slats beneath. Boiling river water is a non-negotiable daily chore, eliminating waterborne pathogens common in stagnant mangrove ecosystems. The small gas canister provides a rapid ignition source when dry tinder is scarce. The fire serves a dual purpose, heating the water while slowly roasting a banana. Heat breaks down the complex starches in the fruit, rendering it sweeter and easier to digest. Applying dry heat directly to the skin creates a natural steaming chamber inside the fruit. The blackened peel acts as an insulating layer, protecting the soft flesh from turning to ash while the core temperature rises. This low-intensity cooking method extracts maximum caloric value from minimal fuel. Wood is a scarce commodity on a floating raft. Every stick must be harvested from the damp mangrove roots and carefully dried under the canopy. He continuously monitors the flame height, ensuring the heat remains steady. Efficiency is everything. By nightfall, the ambient temperature drops significantly over the open water. He slices fresh corn kernels directly from the cob, maximizing the yield by cutting flush against the tough fibrous core. Pan-frying the kernels releases natural sugars through caramelization, adding critical flavor to a highly repetitive diet. Cooking in total darkness amplifies reliance on sound and smell to gauge when the food is ready. A single, low-lumen light source is enough to illuminate the immediate work area without drawing unwanted insects from the surrounding swamp. The meal is simple, but eating warm food before sleep regulates the body's internal thermostat. The dogs share the space, their presence offering both security and passive warmth in the cramped quarters. Morning brings no relief from the downpour. The raft must be repositioned to find deeper, more productive fishing grounds. He uses a long wooden pole to navigate the dense, submerged root systems. Poling is far superior to paddling in shallow mangrove swamps, allowing direct leverage against the muddy riverbed to break the raft's heavy static inertia. The new location immediately yields a catch. He processes the small fish on a flat wooden board, keeping the sharp edge of the blade angled away from his wet fingers. Cleaning fish swiftly prevents the volatile oils in the flesh from spoiling in the humid air. The offal can be repurposed as bait, creating a closed-loop resource cycle. With the lines recast, the waiting game resumes. The continuous exposure to damp, cold air presents a silent, creeping risk of hypothermia. Waterproof layers mitigate the worst of the rain, but the deep chill of the environment requires constant mental fortitude. The dogs instinctively minimize their movement, curling into tight spheres to reduce their exposed surface area. Survival often looks exactly like this. Maintaining order in a confined space is crucial. The heavy-duty plastic bin keeps essential metal gear shielded from the corrosive saltwater environment. Rust is a constant enemy here. Even brief moments of hydration are vital, replacing fluids lost to unseen perspiration under heavy rain gear. Reeling in empty hooks is an inevitable part of passive foraging. Retreating to the dry shelter offers a necessary physical and psychological break. Holding the dog provides mutual thermal regulation, transferring body heat efficiently in the damp air. The bond between the builder and his animals is an active survival tool. They offer early warnings, for changing weather and break the crushing isolation of the mangrove labyrinth. Later in the day, meal preparation begins again. Consistent routine staves off the mental fatigue of isolation. He establishes a fresh fire on the protected deck, shielded from the wind by the structure's low walls. Pouring stored freshwater into the metal cooking vessel initiates the boiling process early, maximizing fuel efficiency. Simmering food over a slow, sustained flame breaks down tough cellular walls in root vegetables and starches, unlocking calories that would otherwise pass through the digestive system unused. The thick metal walls of the pot distribute heat evenly, preventing the bottom layer from scorching on the concentrated embers. Managing the fire's oxygen intake ensures a clean, smokeless burn inside the tight confines of the shelter. He processes the remaining corn, cutting down with the blade to separate the kernels from the cob. The rigid core of the cob is highly combustible and can be dried to serve as excellent kindling for tomorrow's fires. Chopping small red onions adds essential trace minerals and sharp flavor to the base broth. Immediate workspace maintenance is critical. Wiping the cutting board prevents bacterial growth and keeps the small living area habitable. In a confined environment, cleanliness directly impacts health. While the pot simmers, a moment of rest allows his muscles to recover from the continuous micro-adjustments required to balance on a floating deck. After a long pause in the weather, he turns to heavier processing. Using the blunt pole of a small hatchet, he fractures the thick calcium carbonate of the foraged shells, delivering sharp, controlled impacts, prevents pulverizing the soft meat inside. The extracted flesh makes highly durable bait, resistant to being nibbled off the hook by smaller scavenger fish. With the bait prepared, he pushes the raft away from the dense mangrove roots, seeking deeper channels where predatory fish hunt. Untangling the red monofilament line requires intense focus, as knots create weak points that easily snap under tension. He selects a dense, irregular stone to serve as a makeshift sinker. The heavy weight will drag the baited hook down through the strong river currents, holding it firmly near the riverbed where bottom-feeding species congregate. A simple plastic bottle operates as a high-visibility float. Its hollow structure provides immense positive buoyancy, creating enough resistance to set the hook automatically when a fish strikes. This clever adaptation of discarded materials creates an autonomous trap, freeing the builder to perform other tasks while the gear hunts on his behalf. Red line is nearly invisible underwater, blending into the murky, tannin-rich environment of the mangrove ecosystem. night falls, and the focus shifts back to sustenance. Feeding the dogs their share of the hard-earned catch reinforces their loyalty and maintains their condition. The pack eats together in the tight, illuminated space of the shelter. The bright LED light acts as a psychological anchor, pushing back the oppressive darkness of the surrounding swamp. Consuming a heavy protein meal before sleep triggers the digestive system to generate internal heat, a crucial defense against the plunging nighttime temperatures over the water. He carefully secures the remaining supplies before lying down on the bamboo deck. The harsh, damp environment extracts a heavy physical toll, making unbroken rest imperative for muscle recovery. Under the heavy blanket, they conserve their pooled body heat. The journey continues through the driving rain. He propels the heavy bamboo structure forward, reading the surface currents to minimize physical exertion. To improve the shelter's habitability, he hangs a thick, patterned rug directly beneath the thatched roof. This fabric partition serves a dual mechanical purpose. It acts as a windbreak against the horizontal rain, and it creates a smaller microclimate within the shelter that is much easier to heat with a single body or a small stove. The heavy material dampens the echoing sound of the storm, providing a necessary sensory barrier. Proper shelter architecture is always about defining boundaries against the chaos of the outdoors. With the interior shielded, he turns his attention back to tool maintenance, examining the edge of a small hatchet. A dull blade requires excessive force, dramatically increasing the risk of an accidental slip on the wet deck. Hours later, the daily rhythm of fire preparation begins again. He meticulously sorts the gathered sticks, selecting the driest pieces to form the base of the combustion core. The metal stove design is highly efficient, featuring thick walls that trap and reflect heat inward, creating a concentrated thermal updraft. By stacking the wood with plenty of airspace, he ensures maximum oxygen flow for a rapid ignition. He transfers clean water from the large plastic reserve into a metal cup for boiling. The constant need to boil water dictates the entire schedule of his day. As dusk settles across the river, the small metal pot is placed over the established flame. The controlled fire transforms the damp, hostile environment of the raft into a functional hearth. Under the focused beam of a headlamp, he transitions to cooking the day's catch. Placing the fish directly on a wire rack exposes the meat to the intense radiant heat of the glowing embers, rather than open flame. This technique rapidly sears the exterior, locking in moisture while allowing the rich, smoky flavor of the wood to penetrate the flesh. He monitors the charring process closely, turning the pieces to prevent the delicate skin from sticking and tearing against the hot metal grate. The dogs remain quietly within the bright interior of the hut, instinctively drawn to the ambient heat of the stove. The scent of rendering fish oil cuts through the damp night air. Cooking over open coals requires constant vigilance, but it provides the most direct conversion of harvested energy into human endurance. The final evening marks a distinct shift in routine. Preparing a larger catch requires heavier tools. He uses a sturdy knife to descale and clean the fish on the raw bamboo deck. Leaving scales on would create a tough, inedible barrier, while cleaning the abdominal cavity prevents rapid spoilage. The fading light signals a drop in temperature, pushing him inside the newly upgraded shelter space. The low ceiling of the arched roof structure immediately begins trapping the radiant heat rising from the small clay stove. He switches to a small axe to sever the tough spinal column of the fish. Using the weight of the axe head rather than muscular force conserves his waning energy at the end of a grueling day. The heavy steel easily fractures the bone without crushing the surrounding meat. Moving the operation inside, he establishes a vigorous fire in the clay stove. The thick earthen walls of the stove act as a thermal battery, absorbing the intense heat of the flames and radiating it outward long after the wood has turned to ash. This steady, lingering warmth will keep the shelter comfortable through the long damp night. He prepares the fish on the cutting board, rinsing away any remaining grit with fresh water. Clean preparation is the final barrier against disease in a remote environment. He pours oil into the metal pan, waiting for it to reach the critical frying temperature. When the oil shimmers, the fish is introduced, creating an immediate, violent sizzle as the surface moisture instantly vaporizes. Frying in hot oil creates a crisp, dehydrated crust through the Maillard reaction, significantly elevating the texture of the meal. Adding pre-packaged seasoning introduces a dense hit of sodium and complex spices, replenishing electrolytes lost to continuous physical labor in the humid mangrove canopy. He checks the pan, watching the fish turn a deep golden brown as the proteins fully denature in the heat. Even while cooking, he maintains a line in the dark water, maximizing every available second for passive harvesting. The river never stops flowing, and opportunity never pauses. When the crust is perfect, the meal is ready. Eating the rich, calorie-dense food represents the culmination of days of difficult, wet labor. The dogs wait patiently, knowing they will share in the success of the hunt. The arched roof overhead now completely deflects the persistent rain, a profound structural victory over the relentless elements. The environment has not changed, but his mastery over it has deepened. He suspends a simple lantern from the reinforced apex, proving the strength of the new arch. Structure, landscape, and daily routine now operate as one system. In this unforgiving wilderness, they have engineered a quiet, dry sanctuary.